Welcome to our 14th episode of Child Sexual Abuse Prevention by Zina podcast. I'm your host, Zina Poncel. This podcast drops on July the 4th, the day the Declaration of Independence was ratified in 1776 by the Second Continental Congress, establishing the United States of America. So, happy Independence Day. Y'all please be safe out there. Often there's drinking and all kinds of other stuff on the holidays, which can increase the risk of child sexual abuse. Please keep your children away from anyone consuming any kind of substances, alcohol or drugs. If you choose to consume, please don't do it around your kids, and please don't be driving. Be sure your children are with a safe grown-up who can make sure they're safe while you're out. Today, I'll be going over myths, also known as false beliefs, and facts of child abuse, which will include child sexual abuse. I'm just going to go over 10 of them. It's on a PDF form from the National Children's Advocacy Center, and I've mentioned them before in previous podcasts. But if you want a copy of this PDF, you can go to their website, or you can just shoot me an email at csapreventionbyzina@gmail.com, and I will send it straight to you. But anyway, let's get started. The way I'm going to do this is I'm just going to literally read the number, and I'll read the myth, followed by the facts. Number 1, child abuse only happens in some parts of society. The way I'm reading this is it's broken down into like lower, middle, and upper class, your socioeconomic status. And then here's the facts that they have based on that. Rates of physical abuse and neglect are affected by socioeconomic status, which says that physical abuse, child physical abuse and child neglect are more prominent in certain socioeconomic statuses. It's child sexual abuse, perpetration, and victimization that occurs in all parts of society. What that's saying is it is not limited to, or it is not more prominent in certain socioeconomic statuses. Child sexual abuse offenders and victims are from all of the socioeconomic statuses, lower, middle, and upper class. It is not more prominent, like I said, in one. So think about that. Anybody in any social class can be a perpetrator or a victim. Number 2, children are victimized by creepy, psychopathic strangers. That's the myth. The fact. In 2015, 91.6% of victims of all types of your abuse, child abuse, were maltreated by one or both parents. Other perpetrators known to victims included foster parents, other relatives, neighbors, and daycare providers. Okay, so that's 91.6% of child abuse victims of all types of abuse knew their offender. Now let's back this out and pull up just child sexual abuse. So for child sexual abuse, about 90% of victims know their abuser, which we've been saying that for years, of course, and here's data to back it up. But think about it. So 91.6 of child abuse cases, of all types of child abuse cases, and then if that's broken down into just child sexual abuse, that's 90%. That's still almost 100% of our children who are victimized of all kind of abuse know their offender. Please be careful who's around your kids. Number 3, the myth. Children usually tell someone they are being abused. Here's the fact. Research has found that most child victims delay, which means they won't tell immediately. They might tell it over time, or never disclose. Now, when you hear the word disclose, that means telling what happened. But some of them never disclose child sexual abuse to friends, family, or the authorities. I'm going to read that again. Research has found that most child victims delay or never disclose child sexual abuse to friends, family, or the authorities. And some of you right now that are listening to this podcast can relate to what I just read. So remember, there's counselors out there. There's people that work in this field that would be happy to hear your story and to get you some help. You don't have to keep it all in. I just wanted to throw that out there to you. Number 4, many children lie about being abused. That was the myth. The fact. False allegations of sexual abuse by children and adolescents are statistically uncommon, occurring at the rate of 2 to 10% of all cases. Now, what that's saying is less than 10% of kids lie. Generally, if a child's telling you they're being sexually abused, they are being sexually abused. Only less than 10%. From 2 to 10% of all cases are fabricating it or making it up, which leads 90% telling the truth. Number 5, if the child has been sexually abused, there will be medical evidence. That's a myth. The fact, medical evidence is found in less than 5% of substantiated child sexual abuse cases. Now, the word substantiated means that it has been found to be truthful. Okay, so I'm going to read that again. Medical evidence is found in less than 5% of substantiated child sexual abuse cases. Keep in mind, many offenders or perpetrators, whatever you want to call them, of child sexual abuse will touch, fondle, have the children do something to the offender. So there may not be any physical evidence on your child. But that doesn't mean it didn't happen. That does not mean it didn't happen. All right, let's move on to number 6. Number 6, the most common type of abuse children experience at home is sexual abuse. Now, that's a myth. Child neglect is the most common type of abuse experienced in the home. Now, I'm not saying child sexual abuse is not in the home, experienced in the home, but the number 1 type of child abuse is child neglect. That's the most common type of abuse experienced in the home. Number 7, males who are sexually abused as boys all grow up to sexually abused children. That's a myth. The fact, male sexual abuse victims rarely go on to become perpetrators of sexual abuse. There are some that will do their best to protect kids from offenders because they know how the offenders work because they were child victims. Number 8, only men sexually abuse children. That's the myth. The fact, at least 20% of substantiated child sexual abuse cases are perpetrated by females. That means the offender was a female. 9, boys are less traumatized as victims of sexual abuse than girls. That's a myth. The fact, the severity of traumatization among male victims of sexual abuse is equal to that of female victims. So, please provide our male victims of child sexual abuse with equal compassion and support as you would our child female victims. Look out for all of the kids, male or female. Number 10, children with disabilities are less likely to become victims of abuse than children without disabilities. That's the myth. The fact, children with disabilities are 2 to 3 times more likely than children without disabilities to experience abuse. Now, keep in mind, our children with disabilities, especially your nonverbal kids, they can't say what happened to them. And then there's numerous other reasons why our children with disabilities might not can communicate what has happened to them. So really put an extra hedge of protection around your children with disabilities. Well, that'll wrap us up for today. Shoot me an email at csapreventionbyzina@gmail.com if you would like additional information or have any questions, or if you want a copy of that PDF with the 10 myths and facts on it. I'll be happy to send it to you. Remember, whether you learn about child sexual abuse from me or someone else, please learn it from somewhere. There are some very informative podcasts, blogs, and probably local education on the subject offered in your community. Just check around. Please don't forget to take good care of you. Remember, you are important and you matter. And of course, thanks for looking out for all those kids out there, from babies to tweens to teens. Looking forward to tossing some more information your way next week. Thanks for listening. Have a super weekend.
Don't forget me say, I appreciate it.